with Fred Cary, the CEO of Idea Pros. Fred, I've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time. Thank you for joining me.
Well, I am really happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to speaking to another San Diego native.
Absolutely. So why don't you just take a second and explain Idea Pros? Because I find this whole concept. I wouldn't even call it a concept. I just find that the area that you're dabbling in is something very near and dear to me. It's something I have a passion on, and I love the fact that you've built an entire company around this and what you're doing.
Yeah, and thank you. And initially, this company was just full service. You have an idea, we're going to work as a partner with you until we've launched your company. And I found here in the last year and a half or so that I need to increase the offerings. But basically, what Idea Pros is a company that helps the 95% of entrepreneurs that are outsiders, if you will, have a real legitimate good chance of succeeding in whatever their passion is, from the idea stage to even small startups that just can't seem to get going.
Where where do you see the majority of your clients coming from? Are they coming from, hey, I have an idea, I've gotten a little bit of traction, or do you literally have people coming to you with like, I got an idea written on this napkin here, Fred, help me do something with this.
Yeah, we have in the beginning, especially, it was all an idea on a napkin, basically. I know I need help. I don't know what to do, but I know I really want to do this. Will you guys work with me? And those type of people we work with on a full partnership. It costs a lot of money, but it's about a quarter of what it would cost them to do on their own. And we do all the heavy lifting. We do everything from the research, development, branding, naming, positioning, engineering, if it's a physical product, app development, if it's software, all the way through creating a website, training them as an entrepreneur, and launching them as a company. Hopefully within 18 months. With the pandemic and everything, it ended up taking a lot longer. But lately, we're getting more and more people that um, they've been working on their idea for 3 years, 5 years. They have an app ready or a product ready. They want to go to market, and they really need help understanding, like, how am I going to get to market? What's my strategy for going to market? Where can I raise capital? What's the best way to do it? Teach me how to be a CEO of my brand new company. We're getting a lot more of that now too.
What are the characteristics you're typically seeing in these entrepreneurs? I mean, my assumption would be that everybody has a big dream, but these are people who have ideas or concepts or think that there's an opportunity in the market, but as you said, don't really have that marketing, branding, business development experience. Are you seeing a lot of people like that, or do you see people that are more of, hey, I know how to market or I know how to sell, but I have no idea how to build a product or come up with an idea or know what the world needs?
Most of the time, we find people that don't know how to do any of it. Or in a worst case scenario, we find people that think they know how to do marketing, and usually they're way off on what they want to do. Even on the research level, most of our research as a first time entrepreneur amounts to, there's a real need, I know, because I need it and I don't have it. So most good ideas are spawned from an individual need. But a lot of times that research stops right there. Or like, I asked my mom or I asked my friends, and everybody thinks it's an awesome idea. And that's the extent of the research. So we do get people that, in fact, I was talking to a gentleman just yesterday that he spent 5 years developing his product, doing a prototype. He's got it all laid out, knows exactly what he wants to do, but as you pointed out, doesn't have any idea how to take it to market. So we'll get a lot more of those type of people than anybody that really understands the sales and marketing and just needs help with taking their idea and developing it into a product that can be manufactured.
Yeah, I used to. I'd always laugh. I do some advisory work, and people would come to me and say, "Hey, I have this idea. I'm thinking about starting this company. Like, I'd love to just talk to you and kind of get your thoughts and your ideas. And I'd be like, yeah, man, whatever, a friend, sure, happy to jump on a call and talk and provide free consulting and do all those types of things. And they would follow up with, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and send over this NDA or something like that, right? And I'd always laugh because ideas are a dime a dozen, right? I mean, they really are, and it's just all about execution, and the ability to execute on these ideas. How did you go about building these competencies internally? I mean, I know this company's been around for a little while, and you have a really solid team around you. But as you thought about this concept and getting it off the ground, did you sit back and go, okay, I have this vision for building this company that's going to help entrepreneurs, fulfill on their journeys, and here are all the components and the functional uh, areas of specialty that we need to build, or did it sort of happen organically?
Um, I spent my entire career building companies from
Mm-hmm.
the ground up, 10 different companies, and had about an 80% success rate, which is phenomenal, since 90% of companies fail. Um, and so I literally spent a year looking at my successes, looking at my failures, trying to find commonality, and putting together in a formulaic way a program that addressed all the positive things that I found happened over and over again, and tried to avoid all the negatives. And so it was a systematic approach right from the get go. And there are things that we've had to learn along the way, like there are a couple of critical elements that are best outsourced, like, for example, engineering or app
Mm-hmm.
development. So we work with teams of companies that are really proficient at what they do in that area, while we advise and build. You can think of us mostly like a strategic organization that's going to help you with the naming, branding, positioning, competitive analysis, how to break into the marketplace, how to present yourself when you come out as an organization, and then outsourcing the very important grunt work that requires a really deep and very expensive skill set. So the benefit of that approach is I can go to an app company and say, I have 100 apps for you to build. And I can get a price point that is typically about 1/4 of what somebody would spend on a one-off. So that for the price of what somebody would spend on an app, they get an organization that helps them build an entire company, and included in that same price point is the development of the app. So that's it. It's worked well as a model. The thing I did not do well is I didn't build the entrepreneurs enough. So my first set of entrepreneurs coming out, um, some were really good and some were like marshmallows, just expecting the world to come to them and not understanding how difficult entrepreneurship is. But now we have a series of master classes on how to become a kick-ass entrepreneur, and we make everybody take those classes when they do anything else with us. So that really helps.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Is how hard being an entrepreneur is, right? This whole concept of like embrace the suck. Like, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard. You have to be super resilient. You're going to face rejection and all these different types of things 100 different times, and you got to be able to, willing to run through those walls and make sacrifices. How do you help entrepreneurs understand that? I mean, somebody comes to you, they have an idea, they're, super smart, intelligent, have a background, have some connections, and you're like, does this guy have the wherewithal? Especially people who, maybe are coming from locally here, like a Qualcomm or whatever it is, where they might have a cushy job and kind of have some things laid out for them. And it's like, well, are you really ready to make these sacrifices? Is your mindset in the right place? How do you approach the mental side of this?
Interestingly enough, I'm going to be introducing a personality test that I'm going to make every entrepreneur take before we decide to work with them. If we're doing the full thing with them, we also have modules and business validation packages and things like that. I have an idea. How do I make it not suck? That type of stuff we don't worry about. But if I'm going to be with somebody for 18 months or more, I want to make sure they have the right kind of personality. And so the types of questions that we ask of an entrepreneur, especially your Qualcomm example, cushy job, 40 hours a week, overtime, benefits, bonuses. You're going to go from that to working 80 to 100 hours a week for no pay and have almost consistent rejection and almost constant fires. I mean, so I try to make sure in the beginning that people understand this is crazy. It's crazy to be an entrepreneur, right? But you're the only people that change the world. And we see all the success stories of entrepreneurship, but we don't look at the history of those success stories. So I make people look, look at the history of Airbnb. For all of your followers, go up there and go into Google and look at the history of Airbnb. It took them forever, and they had to do all sorts of strange things to raise capital to even get started. I mean, during the Obama McCain election, they created giant cereal boxes and went out and marketed those with Obama O's and McCain Flakes or whatever they were called, sold those just to be able to make payroll and do the next bit of their app development. When their app first came out, they had 2 air mattresses in one bedroom apartment. That's all they had to sell when they first came out. But people look at the Airbnbs today of the successes and the global presence, and they think, oh, that's what I want to be. It's a really hard journey. So education is the first thing, and making sure somebody has a personality set that can accept failure as an opportunity to learn how to do it the right way rather than as this roadblock that stops you from going forward. That's the difference. The perseverance is, if I had to say one word, is what I'm really looking for in an entrepreneur.
Yeah, that Airbnb story is an interesting one. I know a little bit about it. And, I know that, the name Airbnb came from the concept that what they would do is you would rent out your house and they would drop off an air mattress. And, like the idea was, hey, you can turn your place into a B&B. We're going to go ahead and book it, and then we'll drop off an air mattress. They can sleep on this air mattress and then they can leave, which is kind of a silly idea on its own. So I think there's a component of that story too that's around iteration, right? It's the ability to come up with a product or an MVP of the product, get it out to market, get some maybe early validation, but also understand that the idea that you had on day one may not be what the company ends up being. Uh, I'm assuming that you guys are implementing a lot of concepts from like the lean startup and MVPs and constant iteration. How do you guys approach that, or how do you talk to your entrepreneurs about that as they're getting their product out to market?
That's the most difficult piece of it, because people, again, with your Airbnb example and my Airbnb example, right? It was a shitty product with a stupid idea, and they're a multi-billion-dollar multinational organization right now. And there's a subset of my entrepreneurs that want today's Airbnb. And they want it for $150,000, where Airbnb's probably spent $300 million on app development alone to get to where they are today. And so getting people to understand that you got to get out there and test the waters and see what's happening and flow with those waters, go where those waters lead you. Quicken, for example, they stumbled into QuickBooks, and QuickBooks is now 95% of their revenue. And they did it just by surveying the people who are using Quicken. They found out that something like 65% of them were using it for their small business. And so they completely changed their model to be this business software, as opposed to helping you with your taxes and your personal income and expense issues. Instagram, when Instagram first started, it was pathetic. The first photo on Instagram was a grainy photo of the founder's dog and his girlfriend's foot with a flip flop on it. I think that was the second one that was posted. The first one was a bridge or something, but you couldn't comment. You could like. That's about all you could do. Yeah, no, I don't even think you could even like. You could just view in the very first iteration of Instagram. 2 years later, they had 13 employees. They still had no revenue, and they got acquired for $1 billion by Facebook. So it's understanding that you got to get out there and understand what the market wants rather than what you believe the market wants. Don't build all this crazy stuff that nobody may even have any need for. Just take your fundamental components of your core idea, get it out there, and see what your audience wants and adjust accordingly.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice. From my experience, I find that's one of the hardest things entrepreneurs have one of the hardest things entrepreneurs are able to do. And I think what it comes down to is this psychology of being vulnerable and sort of fear of failure, right? Because when you start a company and you got a new product and you've put a lot of your own personal capital behind this, and you roll out a product that you're not super excited about, it kind of sucks a little bit, and you don't want to do it, right? Because it's a reflection on you as an entrepreneur. So you hold back and you hold back and you hold back, and you kind of get into this situation where you're trying to make this product perfect, and you spend longer than you need to, and then by the time you get out to market, you completely miss the boat. You're too slow. You're too late. You don't have the right feedback. I think I read somewhere in probably the same lean startup book, Eric Ries said something to the extent of like, if you're not embarrassed by your first iteration of your product, then you waited too long to release it. And I think there's probably a lot of truth to that.
You know what? I'm going to steal that
Yeah.
because that's really a very interesting point. In fact, last night I had one of my entrepreneurs write to me that we developed an app that's 3 layers. It's a licensing platform for different regions. It's got a super admin component to it, and it's got another level to it where you can see any city like a native. Like, so you're licensing different areas, and the experts in those areas will give you all sorts of inside tips. So even in your own hometown, San Diego, you'll learn about we happen to have the largest whiskey bar in the world right here in San Diego. You
Oh,
may not have
interesting.
known that.
I did
over
not.
over 4,000 brands, so even as somebody who's lived in San Diego for a lifetime or almost, there's still all these secrets out there. And this guy said exactly that same thing. Well, this is embarrassing. I don't want to release it. This is a joke. And here's this multi-layer app that all you got to do is start plugging in some APIs and going city by city and growing it. And as you said, in the lean startup, if you release something that you're not embarrassed about, you've waited too long. The first version of it needs to be something that is a lot less than what your vision is, because your vision is probably going to cost $10 million and you might be building the wrong thing.
That's right. How, when you think about the companies you work with, I'm assuming sounds like software is a big component of this. How often are you working with companies that are more in the consumer brand space that actually have physical manufacturing that takes place as well?
We're about 50-50. We,
Okay.
we we do have a lot. There's a lot of consumer goods, things in beauty, fashion, clothing, hardware, consumer electronics. We have a really kick-ass product that's just releasing right now that I know everybody's getting all their Amazon boxes every week, and they don't know what to do with all that cardboard. We have this amazing cardboard shredder that really takes all those boxes and turns them into either packing material, or you can actually use them for composting. And it's just going to be an amazing thing. So we're really all over the board. We have products that are B2B products, like we just launched something called Hive that's gotten a ton of publicity already, which is basically the old heavy wooden pallets with the nails and splinters and back injuries. We've created something that's just as strong, made out of cardboard. And we have 3 different patents on the way it all holds together to give it the strength it needs. It's all modular, takes up 1/10 of the space, weighs 1/10 of the weight, just as strong, no splinters, no nails, no back injuries. And so we're kind of all over the place. What I found is that there's a formula. No matter what you want to release, there's a formula. Whether it's physical products, software, you have to do certain things in an incremental fashion and make sure you get them all covered, like the spokes on a wheel, because if you're missing a couple, you're likely to collapse.
Interesting. Do you have some insight on, from a high level, what those things are and how you sequence them out?
Yeah, at the highest level. And in fact, we have a free kind of insider's guide list that I can provide for the audience. In fact, we'll
Yeah, it'd
put
be
it
fantastic.
we'll put it on ideapros.com, and it's just like an insider's list. And it's basically, it amounts to this, but with every element of this list to get started, we also have a little podcast or video blog that talks more in depth about all those things. But the very first thing is research, right? I had a blog that basically said what do bad ideas and millionaires have in common, and that's they start with a bad idea and they iterate, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
until they make it a great idea. And so the elements really are the analysis in the very beginning, because people don't really look and really understand. When somebody invented the first car, they could very likely feel like, wow, I don't have any competitors, I have the first car. But you got to understand what the problem is. The problem wasn't cars, the problem was transportation. So there was competitors. It was a horse and buggy was your competitor, right? So there's always a competitor. So very thorough market research that looks at your market opportunity, the size, the growth, the competitors, the weaknesses of the competitors, because as a startup, you can't compete with their strengths. What consumers or whoever your customer is really missing from those competitors, and how you can make that the centerpiece of your offering. That's the very first thing that you need to do. And after you've done that, all the kind of branding, positioning, when you think about branding, everybody that comes to me, even if it's a paper napkin idea, they have a name, and it's going to be Joe's magnificent toaster oven or something that's very descriptive. And that's the one area that really differentiates you. For example, if you can imagine this young skinny kid with the black t-shirt going up in front of an audience of 1,000 people and saying, hey, I want to start this new computer company and I want to compete against IBM and Microsoft and digital equipment and all these other very industrial companies, and I want to call it Apple. How many think that's a great name? Nobody would raise their hand out of 1,000 people, so you have to be disruptive in how you go out, how you position yourself, how you brand yourself. Virgin as an airlines, really, and those things really make a difference, because they start building the integrity in the core of your value proposition and distinguish yourself from others. And only after you have all that, then that's when you start building. Because if you build before you have your corporate identity and what you want to be when you grow up, then you may be building something that's completely contrary to what you want to do as an organization. So those are the critical elements just from the very beginning of what you do. And then, of course, the right engineering team or the right app developers, making sure that you focus on your minimal viable product, not building up the third generation of something that you don't even know if people want the first generation of it. And then again, being consistent with your brand as you go through that engineering or app development. Now you're creating your web pages, you're securing your social media, you're getting trademarks on all this stuff that you need, so you don't have an issue that you're ready to go and you're going to get a notice that you're violating somebody's trademark. And then you got to have a launch strategy and capital. You need capital. You're
Yeah.
always going to need capital. Every CFO that I ever hired in the 10 companies I started, I have a top 10 list for them. The number one thing was never let me run out of money. That was the number
Mm-hmm.
one thing, because what you have to understand as an entrepreneur, the faster you grow, the more you're going to need money, because you're getting an order in and they may not be paying you for 60 days on that order. You got to fulfill it. And so your cash flow is not going to keep up with your growth. And so you're constantly having to go out and look for capital. And that's something entrepreneurs just don't understand. I'll fund it myself. If you're going to make a lifestyle business and sell on Amazon and make $100,000 a year, you can do that. But if you want to build $1 billion organization, you got to have cash around you all the time.
God, 100%. There's so much there that you just brought up. God, I want to talk a little bit about the cash piece, but before we go there, I do want to talk a little bit about branding, because I think you hit upon something that's really important there in the especially in the consumer product space, right? Because there is a tremendous amount of commoditization that exists with consumer products. Like the idea that you're going to invent something that is completely novel and has never been thought of and nobody else is doing anything similar, it's like pretty rare, let's be honest, right? But you look at companies that are able to tap into a particular demographic and appeal to I don't know, a desire or a want or a type of personality trait, and then they position themselves the right way. It's like those are the companies that take off, right? I mean, I guess I'm thinking of like a Dollar Shave Club or someone like that, right? Like billion-dollar company eventually, purchased, I think, by Procter and Gamble. Um, or art shaving was purchased then. But my point is, it's like, were they the best razor? No. Were they the first budget razor? No. But they were kind of able to position themselves in this way around comedy and appealing to a certain audience and a certain sensibility. And then people just wanted to buy that. They knew the brand, they felt comfortable with it. I mean, I can look at my own, one of my little side projects I have is a fitness company called Hero Barbell Co. And we're in a highly commoditized space. I mean, we sell fitness equipment. There's 1,000 manufacturers of fitness equipment out there, but we went after a very specific lifestyle and worked to create a lifestyle brand. And we built all of our messaging around it and our personas around it, and sort of the idea of the person who is a customer of ours is a certain type of person and they want to be associated with a certain type of brand. And we've become very successful based on that. But without that brand, if it was just us rolling our product out and saying, hey, look at our product, we're just as good as these other 20 products that are like ours, we never would have seen any of that success.
Uh, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head in that regard. The reality is, you talked about Procter and Gamble in passing here as an inquirer. Go on the Procter and Gamble website. Look at the thousands of different things they have under all these different brands that are kicking ass. And to me, they're one of the most brilliant marketing companies in the world. And the reason they're so successful is they find a way to differentiate themselves. They could have a product sitting on a shelf that's inferior to the product next to it, and you're going to buy their product because you associate, and it costs more. You're going to associate with that product better, and that is the whole secret to being successful. Not creating this first golden widget that never has been thought of before, because the likelihood is it's never been thought of, so there's no demand for it. So you got to go out and create a demand, right? The best thing you can do is find a way to take something that there's a market for and create your own version of it that's going to be very appealing to a nice percentage of what that audience is. And in today's world, you can go and look for one-star reviews of your competitors and look for some commonality. Put together a chart. Wow, I realized that 28% of the one-star reviews that these three competitors have all center around this one thing. With razors, it could be the convenience of having these razors delivered regularly to my home. Wow, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sell the same crap. I'm just going to deliver it to people's homes. And then basically, that's what happened. And now you have a subscription model that nobody else has. Now you have a name. Now you have a pedigree. Now you've built consistency around your messaging. And that's what people buy. They buy brands more than they buy products. And if you go lightly on the brand, you're going to just be another Me Too product.
Yeah. You probably know the team, local San Diego company, the Manscaped guys. And what that company was able to build. I mean, they didn't invent the greatest clipper ever, but they had just genius marketing and position on that product, and were able to build that thing up to whatever the company's worth right now.
Yeah,
So,
Steve, go ahead. I
oh,
was going to say,
Steve.
yeah, Steve King's one of the founders, and he's been over a few times. We're actually building an app. I think we're just about ready to go, not with Steve, but an app that would be perfect for Manscaped, and we're going to be meeting about that. It's actually called the Complete Man app, and it's all about, whether you're at home or whether you're traveling, basically looking at things from a guy standpoint. Where are the best whiskey bars? Where's a good barber shop? Where can I get those tickets to a ball game I want to go to that sold out, all these sort of man-related things. So he and I have been talking a lot. He has another brand, by the way, that is
Or
more
Orchid.
on, yeah, he's got Orchid, and he's got one more that's on the, I forget what the damn thing's called, but he's
Was it?
really starting to do well. It's for facial stuff and
Yeah.
stretch marks and things. And so the guy is successful over and over again with the things he touches because he focuses on just that, on the branding. How do I distinguish myself? How do I create an audience that is just not consumers, but they become passionate advocates of your brand? Because that's the best way to market an organization, when you have very loyal consumers that tell all their friends.
Yep. So there's two more topics I want to talk about. The first one is money, finance, investor capitalists specifically. It's one of those things that really is everywhere. There's no shortage of money that exists, but uh, the people who have that money are very savvy. They're very smart. They're seeing a lot of different teams and a lot of different ideas, and they're not going to just give it away to anybody. They give it away to teams they believe in, that have ideas that they believe in and they feel can execute. When you're working with your people, and I'm assuming you take an equity stake in some of these projects as well. How do you guide them, or how do you advise them on the best ways to find capital?
Hmm. This is a subject that I changed my mind about over the last 6 months on how to do that. But there's several different ways to raise capital, right? But it all starts with a pitch deck. And regardless of who you're going to, but especially if you're going to the savvy people you're talking about, either accredited investors, you could do what's called a 506C, which is a private offering that you still have to register with the SEC, or you can just start out with friends and family. And so, or you can go right to private equity or venture capital. They all need the same thing, but they need it at different levels. And here's the very first sentence of what they need is, what's in it for me? And it's the one thing we don't ever talk about with presenting our pitch decks, right? So they need to understand what's in it for them. How am I going to get 10 times, 50 times my return in a startup? And we never focus on that stuff. If nobody wants to do that 3-year financial projection model, and when they do it, then they say stupid things like, these are very conservative numbers. Never use that. Never use it. Or here's my range of where I can be. Go in there, be very specific. We did all this research. We went from the bottom up, and we came up with our numbers. This is what we're going to be doing. This is how we're going to be doing it. Be very specific. But the very first thing that we do as entrepreneurs is, we got a meeting. And so now we're going to use every bit of that 45 minutes or half hour or an hour that we've been given, and just plow through everything, talk about how wonderful and amazing and different we are, and then ask for a check at the end. What I tell my entrepreneurs is, if they don't believe the big picture, why are you wasting your time? Right? So why not start with, don't start with the problem statement. That comes in 2 or 3 slides in. Start with the big picture, the big idea. The winter is coming. There's a seismic change that's taking place, and in fact, we're out raising capital right now, and that's how I start with my big idea. Is that and I'll use me as an example. Like when I was growing up, if you thought of a rich person, you thought of the doctors and lawyers and the business owner around you, or athletes or movie stars. That was it. But in today's world, we think about entrepreneurship. That's the number one thing we all think about. It's crammed down our throats in social media. Everybody makes it look easy. You get all these courses. Hey, in 1 month, I can teach you how to make $100,000 a month. It's all bullshit. And it's all like what we focus on, instead of understanding how hard it is. And so you keep reading these stories about, this guy's a high school dropout and he became a billionaire. But those are the exceptions. And if you look at the data, you'll see that 95% of the multimillionaires and billionaires in entrepreneurship went to really prestigious schools. 60% of them got MBAs from those schools. And what did they learn that the other 95% don't know? And that's how to talk to investors, how to be an insider, and how to speak the language that investors want to hear, and how to have the connections you need, because no matter how good your idea is, if you don't have the connections, you're not going to get anywhere. And so Idea Pros has really created an opportunity to take those 95% outsiders and make them insiders so they can compete on an equal footing with the elite crew that gets all the capital thrown at them. And if I can't get the person I'm talking to buy into that as a reality, I'm not going to go any further in my presentation. I'm not going to talk to them about the problem, because they basically, if they say to me after that first bit of the slide, if they say, yeah, you know what, but that's the way it should be, because as far as I'm concerned, if you don't have all that training, if you don't have all those connections, you're never going to get anywhere. So yeah, I don't really see any big need for what you're doing. Stop, go to the next one. Your time is just as valuable as theirs, even though they're going to give you the whole hour. So focus first on painting the big picture, and getting feedback that this is a real opportunity that they understand is a massive problem. And once they do that, then you can start talking. And a lot of times we'll start talking about our team or our technology and things like that, that aren't as important in the beginning, because there's a progression. The number one thing is get them to buy into that big, huge thing. Once they've done that, tell them, not even in a slide, let them know right up front, Joe, I'm glad you think like I do, and I'm going to spend the next half hour talking to you about this. And at the end, I'm going to show you how I can make you 10 to 50 times return on your investment. So I'm just asking you to pay attention, because I think this is a big opportunity, not just for me, but for you as well. So let them know the what's in it for me part of it right in the very beginning, without spending a lot of time in it, because now you have their interest, like, wow, how am I going to get 10 times my money? And once you've done that, then you can go into, look, this is the problem. There's all these free resources for entrepreneurs. They can go to Coursera, they can buy this course, they can buy that course, they can get this training, yet almost all of them fail. Why? Because they don't know how to talk to investors. They don't know blah, blah, blah. You go through the whole process. And a pointer for everybody is every single slide that you present, and should be 10 to 12, no more, should point to a financial model. Because you're talking to an investor, everything you say really needs to be associated with what you're going to show them in that 3-year model. And so if you don't know how to talk about finance, then you're going to hear this response when you say, yeah, and we project it by year 2, we're going to have about 500,000 downloads. And the investor is going to say, how are you going to get there? And we're not prepared for that answer. Well, I'm going to show you later. We go on our 3-year projections, and on tab 47A in column J, I'm going to show you the calculations we use to show how we're going to get there and how much money it's going to take us to get there. If you don't have that type of information, you're not going to get a check. And so you focus.
It's the old a goal without a plan is just a dream, right?
That's right. So basically, when you're talking to somebody, number one, are they buying the big winter is coming picture? Number two, do they recognize the same problem you recognize? Number three, are they buying into the solution that you are proposing? And only after those, then their next question is, yeah, but are you the person that can pull it off? And that's when you introduce your management team. And oh, by the way, this is who's doing this with me. This is why we know we can do it. These are the things we've done before. And here are projections. Here's how we're going to use the capital. And this is why we need your investment. The last thing I would say, and I'm sorry to ramble on, but I think it's really important, is don't fall for you know what? I love this idea. If you guys had these 2 other things, I would really seriously consider investing. The very first thing that we do is run out and get those 2 other things. You come back and they're like, you're really too early on, and do this one other thing or prove this model up, and I'll see you in 6 months. When somebody gives you things you need to do, just tell them no. Just say, we've thought about this for 6 months. We build this model up, hundreds of hours in really understanding this market, the competitive landscape, what we need to launch. This is what we're going with. And I love your ideas. And if you become a big investor and join my board of directors, and 6 months from now, we want to start implementing some of those things, we can talk about it. But today, this is what I have. Are you in or are you out? Don't waste your time.
Yeah. No, agreed. Great advice. And one of the things I really like about your model and just you as an influencer on your own. I mean, we talked about you have a very large social following and you're producing content and you're providing advice is I find a lot of the people out there, a lot of the, influencers, quote unquote, people who are the thought leaders, people writing books, they all like capture this it's like kind of testosterone driven approach of stuff that we talked about, right? Like embrace the suck. It's not going to be easy. Don't expect a free ride. You're going to have to work. You're going to have to persevere. All very, very true. But I feel like a lot of them stop there, right? It's like this, hey, get off the couch, stop being such a, whatever, toughen up. Like I toughened up and look at me, I wear a Rolex and drive a Ferrari now. And you could drive a Ferrari too. If you stop feeling sorry for yourself, get off the couch. It's like, okay, I get it. I get that motivation part. But there is a reality that lives beyond that of things like branding and product development and raising capital, and it's more than just getting off the couch. Like you got to kind of know how the system works, and it seems like yes, you're approaching it from the mental side of it, which is really important, but you also have the pragmatic operational aspect of it that's absolutely successful for any company that's going to be successful.
Yeah, every one of those guys that are showing off their Ferraris and their Rolexes, even now, they're having problems. And that's the one thing they don't talk about. You can go from zero to hero and follow my course or do my program, and you're going to get there. I don't care how successful you get as an entrepreneur, there are going to be fires all the time. There's going to be times when you really start flying and then lose almost everything and have to get up and do it again. And so it's not an easy journey, number one, and it's not a journey that ends, number two. I mean, for the vast majority of us, there's ups and downs. So even the most successful people that you're watching on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn or on some program that you bought, every one of them goes through hassles and ups and downs and has those moments where they're staying awake all night, not knowing whether they're going to be able to make payroll. And we just look at the success as the final point that we're trying to go to. So if you, instead of defining success by capital and wealth, and start defining it by satisfaction and happiness, then you're more prepared to deal with the ups and downs that happen financially. I mean, even companies like FedEx, the founder got down to their last $5,000 in that company. They had $5,000. He went to Vegas and bet that $5,000 and won $24,000, which was enough money to pay for fuel for his jets for the week. And at the end of that week, he got a $17 million deal from an investment group that came in. But that's the way it happens. It's ugly and it's hard and it's repetitive, being bashed about the head and body that you need to be prepared with and embrace, like you said, embrace the suck, because the fact of the matter is that suck's coming even as you succeed more and more. You got competitors coming up behind you that are going to try to blow you out of the water. You have customers that you are converting at a certain rate, and all of a sudden your ads aren't working like they used to. You got to try to figure out what the hell's going on. Your cash flow isn't what it used to be, and you're growing too fast, and you don't have the capital to maintain that growth. So now you have customers dropping off. It's never ending, and you're not going to be able to do it by watching one course.
That's right. So, anybody out there listening, I know we're going to include some links to be able to download some tools. If they have an idea or maybe they've already launched a product and they believe in it and they want some help taking it to the next level, what's the best way to reach out to you, and what's the process look like?
Yeah, well, anybody that is part of your show, if they can just write to me directly, and it's a Fred at ideapros.com. Just write to me, tell me that you heard it here, and I'll be happy to talk to you, put you together with the right team, depending on what it is that you want to do, including giving you a bunch of free stuff You can also go on official Fred Cary, Cary, on Instagram. I'm giving free advice every day. Part of my argument is that you're never going to be able to have a great company unless you learn how to become a great leader. And you're not going to be a great leader unless you're a great person at home. You know, how do you treat your wife, your kids, the dog, your husband, your friends, your neighbors, your community? And so it's really purpose driven. My way of entrepreneurship. So follow me on Instagram. There's a Linktree link there that offers several different things, again, from free to whatever. You can go to ideapros.com, get a lot of information, and you can write to me, Fred, at ideapros.com, and I'll help you out regardless of what it is.
Thanks, Fred. I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing some of your wisdom and experience.
Thanks. It's been fun, and hopefully you guys learn. It's really hard, but keep it up. Perseverance is the number one thing you have to do. And number two, don't think you know everything, because you don't. And bring yourselves into an environment where you're going to learn more and more and gather all the different tools you need to become successful and stay successful.